Screams echoed through the ancient workshop, a horrifying symphony of agony that mimicked the lowing of a bull. Welcome to the chilling tale of the Brazen Bull, where ingenuity met cruelty in ancient Greece. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and immerse yourself in this dark story. If you're hooked, hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us. Let's dive right into the origins of this nightmarish device. The Brazen Bull was dreamed up in the 6th century BC by Perillaios, a cunning bronze worker from Athens, who pitched it to Phalaris, the tyrannical ruler of Agrigentum in Sicily. Phalaris was infamous for his brutal reign, craving new ways to punish enemies and instill fear. Perillaios, eager for favour, crafted a life-sized hollow bull from bronze, complete with a door in its side for trapping victims inside. The idea: light a fire beneath it, roasting the condemned alive while their screams funneled through pipes in the bull's head, transforming into eerie, bull-like bellows that entertained the tyrant and his court. Picture the scene. Perillaios proudly demonstrates his creation, boasting how it turned torture into a twisted spectacle. But irony struck hard. Phalaris, testing its authenticity, locked Perillaios inside as the first victim, letting him experience his own invention's horrors. This act set the tone for the bull's infamous legacy, blending engineering brilliance with sadistic punishment. Ancient historians like Diodorus Siculus documented these events, painting Phalaris as a monster who used the bull on rebels, thieves, and anyone who crossed him. For a practical glimpse, think of it as an early oven of death, where heat conduction through metal amplified suffering without immediate lethality, prolonging the agony for maximum terror. The Brazen Bull stood gleaming in the Sicilian sun, its polished bronze surface hiding the terror within. Phalaris, Agrigentum's ruthless tyrant, had embraced this device as his ultimate tool of intimidation. The bull's design was deceptively simple, yet diabolically effective. Victims were shoved through a trapdoor into the hollow belly, locked inside with no escape. Beneath the bull, a pit was dug for a roaring fire, its flames licking the metal until it glowed red hot. The heat would slowly cook the person inside, their skin blistering as the temperature rose. But the true horror lay in the bull's acoustic trickery. A complex system of pipes ran from the chamber to the bull's mouth, turning human screams into haunting animal-like bellows that echoed across the city. To onlookers, it was as if the bull itself roared in triumph. Crowds gathered in Agrigentum's public square, drawn by morbid curiosity. Phalaris would often stage these executions as grim entertainment, inviting nobles and commoners alike to witness his power. One chilling account describes a rebel leader, accused of plotting against the tyrant, being forced into the bull. As the fire was lit, his desperate cries morphed into low, guttural moans, amplified to sound like a beast awakening. The crowd, both horrified and mesmerized, stood frozen, while Phalaris watched with a twisted smile, sipping wine as if at a festival. The bull's design ensured the victim's suffering lasted sometimes hours before death brought mercy. Artisans later refined the pipes, making the sounds even more lifelike, turning each execution into a perverse performance that cemented the tyrant's fearsome reputation. In the heart of Agrigentum, the Brazen Bull became more than a torture device. It was a chilling centerpiece of Phalaris's reign, a public monument to his unyielding control. The tyrant staged executions in the city's bustling agora, where the bronze beast loomed over the crowd, its polished surface catching the torchlight like a dark omen. Each event was carefully orchestrated to maximize dread and awe. Messengers would spread word days in advance, announcing the punishment of a traitor, a thief, or even an unlucky citizen who'd spoken out of turn. By the time the bull was rolled out on its wheeled platform, hundreds gathered, merchants, farmers, and aristocrats alike, drawn by fear, curiosity, or the grim allure of spectacle. The air buzzed with whispers as guards dragged the condemned forward, their faces pale with terror. knowing the fate awaiting them inside the beast's hollow belly. The process was methodical, almost ritualistic. Soldiers would open the trap door on the bull's flank, its hinges creaking ominously, and force the victim inside, often binding their hands to prevent futile struggles. Once sealed, the executioners piled wood and kindling in the pit below, striking flint to spark the flames. As the fire roared to life, the bronze began to heat, first warm, then searing, the metal conducting heat inward with merciless efficiency. The victim's initial cries, sharp, panicked, would soon distort as the specially designed pipes in the bull's head transformed their screams into eerie, bovine roars. These sounds carried far, bouncing off the stone walls of the agora, a haunting reminder of Phalaris's wrath. One story tells of a young poet, condemned for a satirical verse about the tyrant, whose cries were said to linger in the air for nearly an hour, each bellow drawing gasps from the crowd. Some spectators fainted, others stood transfixed, unable to look away from the grotesque theatre. Phalaris himself often presided over these events, seated on a raised platform draped in rich fabrics, his expression cold and calculating. He'd lean forward, eyes glinting, as the bull's roars reached their peak, sometimes ordering his guards to stoke the fire higher to prolong the performance. The tyrant used these moments to send a message. No one, from the lowliest beggar to the wealthiest noble, was beyond his reach. Historical accounts, like those from the poet Pindar, describe how the bull's spectacles turned Agrigentum into a city gripped by fear, where dissent was silenced before it could even form. The bull wasn't just about punishment, it was a psychological weapon, its very presence in the square enough to quell rebellion. Even children, brought by parents to witness the horror, learned early the cost of defiance. The executions varied in their victims and their crimes, but the ritual remained consistent. A merchant accused of shortchanging the palace was once roasted while his family was forced to watch, their sobs drowned out by the bull's mechanical bellows. Another time, a captured enemy soldier from a rival city-state endured the bull's heat, his roars said to mimic a war horn, adding a cruel irony to his fate. The device's design ensured no quick death. Its thick bronze walls distributed heat slowly, prolonging suffering to maximize the spectacle. The crowd's reactions were mixed. Some cheered, loyal to Phalaris, or simply caught up in the mob's fervor. Others turned away, haunted by the sight of steam rising from the bull's nostrils, a grim illusion of life within the lifeless metal. As the brazen bull's roars echoed through Agrigentum, not every heart in the city bowed to Phalaris's terror. Beneath the surface, whispers of resistance began to stir, fueled by the horrors of the bronze beast. The tyrant's spectacles, meant to crush dissent, instead planted seeds of defiance among those who witnessed the anguish of their neighbors, friends, or kin. In the shadowed alleys and quiet homes of the city, small groups of citizens, artisans, poets, and even disillusioned soldiers began to meet in secret, their voices low but resolute. They shared stories of the bull's victims, like the elderly healer who'd been burned for refusing to poison a rival of Phalaris, or the young mother whose only crime was begging for her husband's release. These tales, passed from one hushed gathering to another, turned the bull from a tool of fear into a symbol of the tyrant's cruelty, galvanizing a quiet rebellion. One figure emerged as a beacon of hope, a former advisor named Theron, once close to Phalaris, but now driven by guilt over the tyrant's atrocities. Theron, a wiry man with a sharp mind, had seen the bull's first use and could no longer stomach the tyrant's rule. He began organizing the discontented, moving carefully to avoid Phalaris's spies, who seemed to lurk in every corner. In a hidden cellar beneath a potter's shop, Theron and his allies plotted to sabotage the bull, hoping to rob Phalaris of his most terrifying weapon. They devised a daring plan to infiltrate the agora during the next execution, aiming to jam the bull's trapdoor and douse the fire before it could be lit. The group included a bronze smith named Chilon, who knew the bull's design intimately, having worked under Perillaius years before. Chilon revealed a flaw. The pipes in the bull's head could be clogged with clay, muffling its eerie roars and diminishing its psychological impact. On the night of a scheduled execution, the agora was packed, the air thick with tension as a condemned farmer, accused of withholding grain, was dragged toward the bull. Theron's group moved in the crowd's shadows, their faces hidden under cloaks. Chilon, with a sack of wet clay slung over his shoulder, slipped near the bull while guards were distracted. As the crowd's attention fixed on the victim's pleas, Chilon smeared the clay into the bull's mouth, blocking the pipes. Meanwhile, Theron and two others doused the kindling pile with water smuggled in leather skins, hoping to delay the fire. But Phalaris's men were vigilant. One of Theron's allies was spotted, and chaos erupted. Guards seized the conspirators, dragging them before the tyrant. Phalaris, enraged by the sabotage, ordered the bull fired up immediately, decreeing that Theron himself would face its wrath. The crowd gasped as the advisor, defiant to the last, was forced into the bull's belly, his shouts of resistance barely audible as the clay-clogged pipes failed to amplify his cries. Though the sabotage failed, the act sent ripples through Agrigentum. The sight of Theron's bravery, his refusal to beg or break, inspired others. In the days that followed, graffiti appeared on the city's walls, crude sketches of a broken bull with slogans calling for Phalaris's downfall. The tyrant, sensing the shift, doubled his guards and staged more executions, but the bull's mystique was fading. Its roars, once terrifying, now sounded weaker without the pipe's full effect, and the failed sabotage had exposed Phalaris's vulnerability. The people began to see the tyrant not as invincible, but as a man clinging to power through a machine of death, one that could be challenged, perhaps even destroyed. The brazen bull, once Agrigentum's towering symbol of terror, now stood in the agora as a grim reminder of Phalaris's faltering grip. The failed sabotage by Theron and his rebels had ignited a spark, and the city's undercurrents of defiance grew into a raging tide. Emboldened by Theron's sacrifice, citizens no longer whispered in secret. They gathered openly in markets and temples, their voices rising with stories of the bull's victims. A baker burned for speaking out, a fisherman roasted for refusing to pay impossible taxes, a childless widow whose only crime was mourning her husband too loudly. These tales wove a tapestry of shared grief, binding the people in a collective resolve to end Phalaris's reign. The bull, meant to silence, had instead given the city a reason to scream. At the heart of this uprising was Lysandra, a young weaver whose brother had perished in the bull's fiery belly. Her grief had turned to fury, and her eloquence drew crowds in the moonlit streets where she spoke of a free Agrigentum, one without the bull's shadow. Lysandra's words reached even the tyrant's own ranks, sowing doubt among his soldiers, many of whom had grown weary of guarding a device that haunted their dreams. One such soldier, a grizzled veteran named Damon, defected after witnessing a child's execution, his hands trembling as he recounted the boy's cries turning to bovine roars. Damon joined Lysandra, bringing with him knowledge of the palace's defences and a handful of loyal comrades willing to betray Phalaris for a chance at redemption. The rebellion's plan took shape in a vineyard outside the city, where Lysandra, Damon, and a growing band of rebels met under cover of night. They decided to strike during Phalaris's grand festival, a lavish event meant to distract the city with feasts while the bull claimed another victim, a merchant accused of aiding rebels. The agora would be packed, the tyrant distracted by his own spectacle. The rebels' strategy was bold. Seize the bull mid-execution, destroy it before the crowd, and use the chaos to storm Phalaris's palace. Damon revealed a critical detail. The bull's platform had a weak axle, easily broken with a well-placed wedge, which could topple the device and render it unusable. Lysandra, meanwhile, rallied the citizens, urging them to flood the agora and overwhelm the guards with sheer numbers. On the festival day, the air was thick with the scent of roasted meat and the murmur of a nervous crowd. The bull gleamed under the midday sun, its trapdoor open as guards shoved the merchant inside. Phalaris, adorned in golden robes, stood on his platform, smirking as the kindling was lit. But as the first flames flickered, a shout rang out. Damon and his defectors charged the bull's platform, hammering wedges into the axle until it splintered with a crack that echoed like thunder. The bull lurched, toppling sideways, its bronze hide crashing against the stone, the fire scattering harmlessly. The crowd roared, not in fear, but in defiance, as Lysandra's voice rose above the chaos, urging the people to turn on the guards. Outnumbered and shaken, Phalaris' soldiers faltered, some dropping their spears to join the mob. The rebels surged toward the palace, Lysandra and Damon at the forefront, their makeshift weapons, sickles, hammers, and stolen swords, clashing with the remaining loyalists. Phalaris, cornered in his throne room, faced the mob with a snarl, but his bravado crumbled as Lysandra stepped forward, her eyes blazing with the memory of her brother's screams. The tyrant was dragged to the agora, where the broken bull lay like a fallen idol. In a poetic twist, the rebels spared Phalaris the bull's fate, instead exiling him to wander Sicily's wilds, a broken man stripped of power. The bull itself was dismantled, its bronze melted into tools and statues, erasing its terror from Agrigentum's streets. Lysandra, hailed as a hero, stood before the cheering city, vowing a new era where no machine would ever again turn screams into spectacle. The story of the brazen bull lingers as a cautionary tale of cruelty's limits and the power of a united people. If you've been gripped by this tale, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support means everything to us.